You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me. Welcome to the neighborhood. Dana, you are joining my friends here at such a wonderful time of the year. You know what's on our minds? Well, when we hear the word spring, what often follows is the word cleaning. And that phrase might bring joyful anticipation to some, or maybe dread and even shame. But before we allow our thoughts to spiral into that, I want to introduce to you my guest, Dana K. White. You are here to help us, and I love the title of your new book, Jesus Doesn't Care About Your Messy House. It is so freeing. And as you tell us more, I want you to just take us into your story and how you came to this revelation and the title of that book.
Yeah, so I was born messy. I have been messy my entire life. Like from the time I was a young child, I would drive my mama bananas. She tried all the things, all the positive things and the discipline things, and I mean, not that discipline's not positive, but you know what I mean. She tried it all to help me. I was messy. I had the locker in high school that everything fell out when I opened the door. And I had a messy apartment when I was single. I thought when I got married that I would not be messy anymore because I thought at that point it's going to matter to me. And so
Mm,
obviously that's the thing I need. I just once I'm married and I care, that's when it's not. But I still didn't despair because I assumed once I had kids and I was a stay-at-home mom, what was I going to have to do but clean? And so at
yeah,
that point, my house was going to
so
be
much
great.
time,
Right. I mean,
nothing else to do.
now I know that even people who were, pretty organized their whole life once they have kids, it's a struggle. But for me, I literally never thought that I wouldn't hit a point where I figured it all out and it was easy, even though it had been my biggest struggle my entire life, right? Like I just assumed I would get there and then I would be able to do it because that's how I am. Like I like to tackle things and I like to figure it out and do the thing. But I became a stay-at-home mom. And I specifically remember when my oldest, was 4 months old. He's 23 now. And I was changing his diaper and looked around his room and realized his room was a mess. And I was like, he's 4 months old. This is not his fault. This is me. And it just hit me that here I was in this time of life I had reached, that I had dreamed of being at, that was going to, you know, having a perfect house was going to be part of it. And it was still a struggle. And I, at that point started to think, I think there's something wrong with me, right? Like I can't do this thing. And, then I mean, I kept on trying. I mean, I tried. I worked really hard on my house, but it never had the impact that I thought it was going to have, which made it even more frustrating, right? Like I would
Yeah,
try to do overhauls. And what I used to do before I had kids was block off the entire weekend to do nothing but clean, right?
yeah.
But once you have kids, you can't do that anymore. There's no such thing as a nothing to do but kind of a weekend, you
Pause.
know?
No,
Yeah.
pause doesn't happen.
It does not. So it just became harder and harder to get started because I'd failed every single time. My mom would come, she would help me, she would get everything organized, and then it would go right back to being a disaster. And so it got to where I hated for her to do that because I was like, I can't maintain this. Like I just can't. And I would
Mm.
try and I would think I was doing what I thought other people did and I couldn't do it. So in 2008, I found out what blogs were.
Mhm.
And I mean, a fire was in me to start one because I wanted to be a writer. And I had said that always. I was a theater arts teacher before I had kids. So I have a creative streak. And I was like, this is the thing I want to do while I have kids is write. And I didn't know how to make that happen until I found blogs and I thought, this is it. I've got to do this. But I didn't start a blog for a year and a half because I wanted to write about motherhood and encourage women. And I thought I would have to hide this thing about me. Right. Like, and I couldn't handle that thought of having to hide this part of me. And so I thought I've just got to get it figured out so that I can then do this thing that I felt like God was calling me to do. I tried and tried and tried. Now I had this different motivation and still could not figure it out. And so it was in August of 2009, about a year and a half after I discovered blogs, that I was in church and I was not listening to the sermon. I'll just be honest. I was praying. And I was praying because my life was going to change the next day. My second out of three kids was going to go to school, go to kindergarten, and I was only going to have one at home. And so logically, I wasn't going to have to coordinate nap times anymore. Right. Like
Mm.
logically,
Mhm.
it made sense for the next day to be the day that I started this thing that was burning inside of me to do. And I was honestly angry that God
Mm.
had not answered my prayer to make me organized, to cure
Mm.
me of this messiness that I had struggled with my whole life. And because I felt like I knew he was calling me to write. And so I was like, why are you not taking this away so that I can do the thing that you want me to do? Right. Like it didn't make any sense to me. And God, I don't say this often, I don't say it lightly. Okay. But God said, just write about that.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, that's actually a really good idea, God. Okay. You know, so my brain, because I have a creative brain, it just started going, right? Like started going. And I went, okay, so I could do a temporary practice blog, right? Like I made up a fake name. I set up a new email so no one would ever trace it back to me. And I started it that, that next day, the day that my son went to kindergarten. He's 21 now. I started it that day and just started sharing with nobody because nobody was reading it, right?
Right.
Started writing what I was doing, what I wasn't doing. I was taking pictures. I was showing pictures, not of myself. Nobody I knew that I was doing this. I didn't even tell my husband at first, right? Like it was a total secret because I assumed I was going to fail again because I had tried everything over the years. And so I started writing and thought it was going to be a couple of months. My house would be perfect. And then I would write about the things I was competent to write about. And now it's 2025.
So you've been doing the same blog, like the same thing for all these years. It's been like your personal journey.
So, in the beginning, yes, it was my personal journey. So, what I did not know, I truly thought I was the only person out there that struggled the way that I did because people didn't talk about it. Like all I knew was what I saw when somebody opened their door and let me inside, right? And I
Right.
did have a lot of friends that I could go over, and their house was always perfectly fine, even though it was an unexpected visit. And so it was very frustrating to me. I thought I'm the only person. I thought that the first people who stumbled on my blog were going to say, "Oh, you are a terrible mother. You are a terrible person. Get off the internet. Like, what are you doing?" And instead, as people started to read, they said, these are my thoughts. This is my
Right.
struggle. I have
Right.
the exact same thought process. And so for about 2.5 years, I was just journaling it for myself, just recording
Yeah.
what I was doing and working out through writing what was holding me back and what I was doing and wasn't doing. And so it was about 2.5 years in. People had been asking from pretty much early on. They would say, "Tell us what you're doing. Teach us to do what you're doing." And I was like, no. Why? Why would anyone ever take my advice on home stuff? I was like, I am just figuring this out. Like I am because it was a matter of I would do great and then I would struggle and I would share it.
Right.
I would share the failures and I would share when I went backwards. I had a friend who eventually when I was telling just a few people, I had a friend who said, I can't read your blog anymore because it drives me crazy when you had already decluttered something and then you have to declutter it again. you know. Well, I was like, that's the truth. I was sharing the actual what was going on, and I was going back, But about 2.5 years in, I had a blogging friend who was homesick one day, and we had known each other. She'd read a few of my blog posts, and I read some of hers. And she just started reading it from the beginning. And she just was texting me all day long saying, Dana, you have to teach people how to do this. You have to write a guide. And I just said, I can't, because I thought that what people would want was what I had wanted, which is how to have a perfect house.
Right.
And
You
I
want
was
to
like,
only share the victory. Like, I'm
yes,
going to hold back
yes,
all of the
exactly.
mess. And when I've got it figured out and I have perfected the
Yeah.
solution and all of the steps, then I can talk to them
Right.
and
And
then we
and,
can
and
share.
I said, and I had gotten to the point where I was like, I don't know that I'm ever going to get it perfect. It was so much better. Like it was my life was very, very, my home was totally different, but it was never that perfect, what I envisioned I was working toward in the beginning. And so I was like, I can't do that. And then it hit me that while I can't tell somebody how to have a perfect home, I can absolutely tell someone how to go from completely and totally overwhelmed and confused over why is this so hard for me when it seems like it's not hard for other people to, okay, I get it now, I can do it. Right.
Mhm.
And so I wrote an ebook. This was in, I think, 2012. So about 3 years in, I wrote an ebook. I called it 28 Days to Hope for Your Home. And that was a transition for me because people were responded very well to it, right? And it was helping other people. And I realized, okay, this is my place. This is the place that I fit into this. Most organizing advice is written by organized people. Their
Right.
their
True.
brains work so differently than my brain. And
Uh huh.
so I would read organizing advice and I would be like, okay, I'm lost on page 3. Your before pictures are my dream after pictures. Like they were leaving out all this stuff, all this basic stuff that I just did not grasp. And so that's where I come in. I'm like, I am the person who can tell you that. And what I've realized, now I write books, I have podcasts and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. I'm the one who is there to explain the things that most people who enjoy this stuff don't know needs to be explained to some of us.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where I came in, and it was a big wrestling between me and God, because I was like, really, this is the thing? Like, this is the thing I was supposed to be writing about? I mean, what a boring subject, right? I'm like, isn't there something more dramatic and all that? But God was just like, these are the needs that I have uniquely designed you to be able to meet. I need you to
Right.
meet these needs that people
Right.
have.
So you kind of come alongside and you're not just sharing your own journey, but you're locking arms and providing camaraderie and saying, you know what? I get it. I get you. Let's do this together. And it's just one step further and we can make it to the next day and the next step.
Right. And over time, I mean, obviously it's 15 years in, and I'm a teacher. I have a teacher's heart. I come from a long line of teachers. And so, putting things into processes is something that, and explaining things is something that God gifted me with. Right. And so it gives me that ability. I created my no mess decluttering process because I had to declutter my own home from total, complete, overwhelming, chaotic clutter to completely controllable for me, right? So all those things that I figured out as I went, I now teach that to other people.
I am imagining back when I had everybody little, right? I
Hmm.
have 9 children. Now they are 28 down to 11, and I've got some good rhythms, right?
Hmm.
But that comes through time. And I
Hmm.
remember in the early days, I could just picture my counters. It was difficult to find a counter to cook on because
Hmm.
I just had stacks and stacks of papers, the bills, the broken toys, the all the things that I had to do. And it was always on my list. I have to get that done. I have to get, and it just became such a mental load and a mental burden. And it wasn't just in my kitchen. I was using the kitchen counter because my desk counter was full. And then there was a basket beside my couch. And,
Mhm,
just these little kind of, I call them, they were things little rat holed away where,
mhm,
just waiting for attention. And I have a memory permanently etched in my mind
mhm,
of an older woman that lived down the road from me. She was a deaconess at our church, and she came over. And I think her purpose was to encourage me. I don't know, really. I think she knew I had a lot of young children. And so she was coming over for the day or for a couple hours to hang out with me. But what I remember was what she said to me. She looked around and she said, Pam, you need to do better with your house because it represents Christ. And when people come over to your house, you need to be representing Christ well. And with your house the way it is, you're like a mark on like that. And then so she said, you need to, at the time we had just started homeschooling. So she said, you need to put your children in school so that you can pay proper attention to your house. And I was speechless, and I felt shame and I
mhm,
felt
mhm.
embarrassed. And I just, I didn't know what to do with that information. And then later, after she left, as I started to process it through and ask God, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what did you put me on earth for? And then I realized it's like the Lord said, I did not put you on this earth to make a clean house to represent me. I gave you those children to invest in them and to send them out to be disciples. And so keep pouring into them, keep teaching them, keep training them, building that relationship with them. And, but that guilt comes back when I see the messy counters, when I'm
Mhm.
not able to get dinner done because I wasn't so organized to get the right ingredient in the house on the day that I needed to make it. But I had to continually go back and speak truth to myself and remind me, like, what am I doing? Why? What am I doing? And what is God's purpose for me here? And it was imperfect. I was imperfect in applying that. I went through such mental flip flops. And I know that is not foreign to you. And you've done a little
Right.
more study on it. Tell me more about
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is I'm sorry that she said that. And I also have grace for her in that she didn't know how to say it and she didn't know her heart, I'm sure, was that she thought she was being helpful.
it.
But
Right.
things like that are not helpful. And that's
Right.
what's so hard. That's where I come in as the translator between the people who are say things like or think things like, how does anybody let it get like this?
Right.
You know, versus the ones of us who say, I don't know how it keeps getting like this. Right. And so the most offensive thing that someone can say is, I guess you just like living like that, or you need to be told that this is, you should clean up your house, or that whatever. I mean, like that's not helpful because it doesn't actually teach me how. Like I knew I wanted my house to be more under control, right? Like I didn't like not being able to find things. I didn't like being late because we couldn't find our shoes. But I didn't know how to do it in the midst of with my personality. Plus you add in 9 children, right? Like you add in all the things. It's like this isn't helpful to just say that. And then when you add on the spiritual guilt to something that may already be a struggle, and then you add on the spiritual guilt, now it becomes a shame issue, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
my goal, is to take away the shame. So my first 3 books have no spiritual content in them. They are only about how to get your house under control, how to declutter. That's it. Because as I was working on my house, I thought, because I'd heard things like that before too, right? From people who were trying to be helpful. And, I get emails from women basically every day, and I hear
Mm-hmm.
it all. I hear the stories of someone told me that if I had more faith, I would be able to declutter. Someone told me if, so it's like I take this thing where I already struggle with clutter, and now you're telling me that I don't have enough faith. Like that brings it to a much different place, right? And so the first three books didn't have any spiritual content because as I was working on my house, as I was also growing in my faith, because about a year before I started my what I call my deslavification process, as I worked on my blog, I had started studying the Bible consistently on my own, right?
Mhm.
As opposed to I had grown up, I had read the Bible, I had studied things, blah, 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 but like daily in scripture where things start to make you go, oh, now I get it, right? Like now I understand because the Holy Spirit's using that, the study of scripture to
Mhm.
help me understand more. So as I was learning more about God and understanding the ins and outs and the truth about his grace and that
Mhm.
all righteousness comes from Jesus, anything I do doesn't get me closer to God. Only Jesus gets me closer to God, right? Like it is not about anything I do. And as I was learning that more and as I was working on my house, what God was showing me was, Dana, I never cared about your messy house. I care about your heart. Okay. Your heart is what I'm looking at. And I've heard this same message from women who will say, I couldn't stop cleaning. I could never let anything be out of place. And then, God showed me that was never what I was asking of you. And I'm like, I would hear that story and I'd go, well, that sounds like a really nice problem to have. Because I was like, well, what about me when I'm inept? Like I'm incapable of doing it. So how does this work for me? And it's that God's grace is the only thing that matters. So when we have this idea that cleanliness is next to godliness, which it's not in the Bible, the phrase is not in the Bible, and yet a lot of people will say, no, it's not in the Bible, but as if it is a concept that isn't the concept true? Like we kind of get this vague thing. So I am tackling that head on and saying, no, it's not only not true, it's dangerous to think
Mm.
that anything is getting me closer to God other
Yeah.
than his grace. Okay.
Mhm.
So as I wrote this book, I'd written those other three books, and God had showed me, don't turn this into a spiritual issue. This is not a spiritual issue. I made you the way that you are. I made you with the brain that you have on purpose for the unique family that you have and life you have. And for me, career that I have, right? He made me this way on purpose. It was not a mistake. And accepting that God made me the way that he made me didn't mean that I said, oh, well, then my house is a mess. I said, okay, I don't have to feel like a failure because the way other people do this doesn't work for me. Instead, I just have to go, okay, well, what does work for me? Right. Like, and I'm never going to be the person who has the perfect house. It's just not, that's just not my personality. I'm the type who things randomly leave my hand and I have no idea when it left my hand, um, but so it's that reality of let's have this conversation about why we need to, because I think a lot of people like to let us believe that cleanliness is next to godliness because it's beneficial if somebody believes that and therefore keeps everything clean, right? you
Mm.
know and of course, obviously, I think it's important because I've written my other books about it, right? Like, but at the same time, we have to have this conversation about how this has nothing to do with how God sees you. It just doesn't, and it's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Jesus, the first time he really lets the religious leaders have it for their hypocrisy, the issue that brings about that speech from Jesus is the his disciples eating with unwashed hands, right? And so, I mean, here's the thing. Logically, of course we need to wash our hands before we eat, right? Like I'm a germaphobe. I mean, not like an official diagnosed germaphobe, but I can't
Cautious.
yeah, I can't eat my chips and salsa after I touch the menu without washing my hands. Like so I have all the things. Of course it's a good thing to wash your hands, but Jesus is saying don't confuse human traditions with spiritual issues.
Mhm.
Okay? Let's make sure we do this, because when you do that, you confuse people, because it's a very easy way to make people do the things that they should do by turning it into a spiritual thing. But then that can cause them to get off track and not understand God's grace and their complete and total dependence on God for his grace. That's a big, long speech. Sorry.
You're good. You're good. You know, I am like, I tend to busyness. I am busy, busy, busy. And yes, part of that is because of the size of my family and the demands of my life. But I have noticed that in the past couple of years, as more of my children are moving away, I don't have that necessity to be as busy as I once was, but yet I throw myself into it. You know, I'm like, oh, we only have 2 gallons of milk in the fridge. I better run to the store. Like, nah, you don't really need to, you know? And so that preoccupation for me with busyness keeps me away from the better thing. You know, if you think Mary and Martha, you know, for some, it might be clutter and keeping their house clean and just continually having to have in a time investment in I got to clean it up, I got to clean, and I do that too. I have to tell you, my kids, it's a joke in the house. They're like, I had a glass and I put it down on the counter and I was coming back to it, but mom got to it before I could even finish my drink
Right.
because I'm always like picking up glasses and wiping down counters and it is hard to transform my mind to allow me to be still and quiet and take time to listen to God. So, some of those outward things that we do, our busyness and our cleaning, can actually be a roadblock and a hindrance to our walk with the Lord.
Anything can be. If
Yeah.
we if we are not giving it completely and totally to God. For me,
Yeah.
I really struggled with, is this really the thing that you have for me, God? Like,
Yeah.
this is it? This is the thing you want me to write about? And God just showed me when Jesus was here, living in human form, he was meeting people's needs, their
Yeah.
needs that they couldn't see past
Yeah.
because it was so all consuming. I know from personal experience that clutter can be an issue that is completely all consuming, especially when you have a personality like mine where you see I always say I don't see incremental mess. I see perfectly clean. I see overwhelmingly messy. I don't see what happens in between. And so I
Mm,
can go from I'm zeroed in on my task, and then I look up and it's an overwhelming mess, and I just shut down.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And so I get that. I understand that. And I have figured out what to do in those situations. And so I am able to help meet that need that people have, that is keeping them from being able to focus on the things that they want to focus on or that they need to focus on.
I have kind of recognized something here. It seems like there's almost like this continuum. Like on one side, we're super clean and we're doing all the like maybe even neglecting time with the Lord because we are putting an emphasis on the physical, the material things. But then there's also the other side where we're only doing like, you know, all I need is Jesus and my house doesn't matter at all. And so I'm just going to be that, um, gosh, again, the Mary and Martha thing. And I'm just going to only do the other. And then I get, there's got to be an in between, right? And how do we
Right.
navigate that?
Yeah. So I have a chapter in the book called I forget what the chapter's called, but it's about balance, basically. It's about that balance. And the fact that, I'm a firm believer that the physical world, God created it to help us
Yeah.
understand him more and understand spiritual
Yeah.
principles more, right?
Yeah.
And so balance is one of those things that I misunderstood for many years. Like, I thought balance was a place of rest. Balance is absolutely not a place of rest. Balance takes uh, mental energy, it takes physical energy. Like, if you are trying to physically balance on one foot, you're using every muscle in your body. And
Yeah.
there's a place of tension and relaxation at the same time,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because if you can't balance harder, so it ultimately comes down to the heart behind that, right? So if my house is a disaster, right? Let's say my house is a disaster and I won't let someone come in because I'm embarrassed of my home, then that's a hard issue. I need to let them come in, even if it is something I'm embarrassed of, right? Because it's my own pride that's keeping me from letting them come in. But if I purposely ignore my house and say, that doesn't matter, and someone comes in and there's nowhere for them to sit, there's no cups for them to drink out of because I haven't done any dishes. And I say, you know what? They shouldn't judge me. That's their problem. Well, that's actually my heart again being selfish and prideful, right? And
Mhm.
so it
Yeah.
always comes down to,
Mhm.
when you read in First Corinthians, there's situation after situation after situation where Paul he's clarifying, like, okay, this, but he always says, he comes back to, but it comes down to your heart. It comes down to love. How are you showing love to help others understand who God is and their love and his love for them, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
that's how you determine what you should do in this situation, right? Am I loving the other person? Am I putting my own pride and my own desires aside and saying, you come in? Sometimes that means that I let them see my mess. Sometimes it means that I make sure I clean up my mess so that they can be comfortable in my home, right? Like that's the thing that it all balances on is the heart. What is your heart to do this? Because the reality is, if your home is one that, and here's the thing too, I have to say, most of the people like me, I can never say all, but I would love to say all because I actually do think it, don't actually want, nobody wants their home to be in the state, right? Like, it's actually very hurtful when people say, well, I guess she just must like living like that, or I guess she doesn't care. I cared so much. I just didn't know how to go about doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I have the personality that gets super caught up in all the cool things. And then I bring stuff home for all these great intentions. I wasn't bringing stuff home to hoard it for myself because I wanted to have all this stuff. I brought home, if I saw 6 coats at a garage sale and they were 10 cents a piece, well, I was going to bring them all home because I thought, well, I'll find somebody who can use that. And then I
Right.
would go over here and I was like, well, here's a, you know, box full of craft supplies. Oh, that would be great whenever someday the church needs such and such for whatever project. I'm going to go ahead and bring that home.
Visionary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I would bring all
Uh-huh.
this stuff home, not because I was trying to hoard it for myself, but the problem was I brought so much of it home for all these great intentions that then I was completely overwhelmed and never was actually able to do those things because there was so much stuff that I didn't know where it was. And then
Yes.
the opportunity came along to
Mhm.
actually need it. And I would think, I know I've got a bag full of stamping supplies somewhere that I've never used, but I bought it for just a situation like this. But the
Mhm.
thought of actually tearing my actual
Finding
house
it.
apart to find it is so
I'm feeling
overwhelming.
this.
Yeah, and so all of those so I push back on the idea that somebody doesn't care
Yeah.
that their house is out of control. Now, I
Right.
do also say that clutter is defined by me because I write the books and I get to define things. But clutter is defined as anything that consistently gets out of control. So it has nothing to do
Okay.
with me going into someone else's house and being like, oh, they have more stuff than I like. It doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Right. But if my stuff is out of control and I can't find what I need, I can't cook dinner because there's stuff everywhere. I can't do the things that I need to do and that I want to do and that I should do to serve others. If I can't do that because I am overwhelmed by stuff, that's when it's clutter. And generally those are the, situations where I get overwhelmed and I just don't know what
Right.
to do. So that's where I
Right.
come in as I teach people,
Yeah.
here's what you do.
Yeah. So you're determining that for yourself and your own level of your capacity to
Yes.
sort through and capacity to work through that. Yeah.
To handle it. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have the feeling you also are always balancing ways to support your community and people that are stepping into this world of organization, handling the clutter, handling the chaos. Where do we find you to do that? And besides this book, what else do you have to share with us?
Yeah, so I don't really write at the blog very much anymore. We do have collections that we put out, meaning like if you're
Uh-huh.
completely overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, here's 27 places where Dana has talked about that, or whatever, because
Okay.
I've
Yeah.
so much
Uh-huh.
content over the years and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, I have a YouTube channel, so I put out YouTube videos every week. I have a podcast that comes out every week, and I have the best place to start, though, honestly, is with my books because they put it all together. Decluttering at the speed of life is the one that will give you the mindset shifts that you need to change how you see your house and your stuff and your understanding of how you can handle that, and then it gives you the actual my 5-step no mess decluttering process. But I
Okay.
teach all of those things as well on
Yeah.
my podcasts and all that. And then this one goes into the spiritual side of, you know, letting go of that shame, which then for most people is the thing that allows you to finally move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, what a freedom in that.
Yeah.
Okay, are you on Instagram also, or Instagram,
Yes.
Facebook, places like that?
Yes. I am on all the places. I
Okay.
don't do a ton on Instagram, but you know, I should.
Hey, that's again the balance, right?
I
Like,
can't.
where am I
Yeah.
going to put my efforts? And there's only so many places and so many hours in the
I
day.
know.
So if you guys are looking for her, just head to the show notes because I will have a bunch of links in there directing you to all the places so that it is just a click away.
Can I tell you one thing? I'm so sorry. If you want to find me, always put the K in there, Dana K. White. If you just search Dana White, that's a man who
Oh,
is bald and is not me.
he's not
So
decluttering.
no. So if you just have
Okay.
Dana White, you're going to find out all about like mixed martial arts and stuff. But if you put in Dana K. White, you'll find me everywhere. So,
Okay. That is wonderful.
okay.
So, as we head into this season and what the Lord might be working within us, working through this information and applying it to our lives, would you just pray for us?
Yes. Lord, I pray for the women who are listening right now. Lord, I pray for the ones who um, have maybe started to understand someone in their life a little bit more by understanding some of the struggles and the potential spiritual confusion that can come from those struggles, Lord. I just pray that you'll give them the grace and the love to be supportive of those other people in their life, Lord. And I pray especially for the woman who is where I was. Um, Lord, I pray that this conversation gives her peace and hope and lets her rest in her knowledge of your love for her exactly the way that you made her, Lord. And I just pray that you would release the shame that she has felt and give her the hope that you don't care about her messy house, Lord, but that there also is a way to move forward. In your name, amen.
And may we be life givers in our communities and in our love for one another. As you were praying, I was just thinking, even in the context of motherhood, how easy as we train our children to clean up after themselves, to clean their rooms, to help us with the dishes, to do all the things, the words that we say and the way that we present ourselves, the way we present cleanliness and organization, those can be life giving words. And those can carry some weight into their future. And so, yeah, let us just be life giving in those words and what we're teaching. Thank you for being here with me today. And ladies, I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye bye. I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true, whatever is known.